Okay, this is chapter 28 on how to fill out the broker carrier agreement. In other words, this is going to be the carrier packet. So we're going to go through this, and to deal with this, I had to really think about this one, because I could do a video and I could go page, and say it's like this. But remember, when you're doing carrier packets, they all have the baseline information. In other words, from carrier packet to carrier packet, it's going to be the same information. But the way that each carrier packet is set up, because some of these companies try to sell you different services while you're still filling out the carrier packet for that particular brokerage or company. So the deal is there's so many different versions. It's not going to do me a lot of good to do this. So what I included in the end is more than one type of video, and every one of them, like some of them got multiple carrier packets in it, and I just couldn't find a better way to do that than to let you watch those presentations. So at the end of the chapter, please make sure you watch some of those videos. And there's other topics in there for particular subject matter that you may have not known. And I do that in all the chapters. That's the reason you see a couple things outside that chapter, but in truth, the relevance to that particular chapter, it is important. But all right, but this is chapter 28. Let's get into it. All right, short acronym for this is going to be a BCA, which is a broker carrier agreement. So if you hear somebody, hey, have you done your BCA? They're talking about your broker carrier agreement. It is vital documentation in logistics as far as the industry. What it does a lot of different things, and we'll get into how it helps to highlight those points and keeps you legal. Now, it outlines the terms of engagement between the freight brokers and the carriers. Properly filling out this agreement ensures clarity and compliance, helping to mitigate potential disputes down the line. This chapter will provide a comprehensive guide on how to fill out the BCA, highlighting key components, common pitfalls, and best practices for dispatchers. So when you go over this, like I said, I shortened it up to give the presentation, but in the chapter, I've also included a step-by-step and directions in the chapter on how to do it. So without me having the BCA to show you each step in that given form, then it doesn't do me a lot of good. Now, obviously, once you fill out a couple, it's the same thing repetitively. But anyways, let's move forward. Okay, understanding the BCA or broker carrier agreement serves several functions: legal protection, operational guidelines, and regulatory compliance. And each of these are extremely important when it comes to this documentation, because you're doing business with a brokerage that you really don't know who they are. Even though they got good credit and all this other stuff, and the truth of it, you don't really know who they are. So legal protection. It protects the broker and the carrier by clearly defining the expectations and responsibilities, minimizing the risk of disputes. And the disputes are so vast and various of what can come of it. But as you go start doing just being a dispatcher in general, you know what, as they call it, the normal practice of business is as a dispatcher and brokerage, that if it steps outside those boundaries, you're going to easily recognize it. Operational guidelines, BCA outlines the scope of work, payment terms, the liability provisions, and ensuring all parties understand their roles and obligations. And that's the big one, is the payment terms. The scope of work and everything, that's going to be your driver, getting there on time, meeting his appointments. The liability provisions, most of the time they want to try to hit you with fines, because remember, this is going to the brokerage. So you're basically signing their terms of agreements. It's not really a lot of room that you can do to alter some of these terms. Some you can dispute and debate with them before you sign. Once you've signed with a limited power of attorney on behalf of that MC number, whoever owns it. So there actually is binding, even if it's your signatures, because you do have a limited power of attorney. Otherwise, what you'd be doing would be illegal. So as soon as you sign that rate confirmation and you send it back to that brokerage, is your baby. So make sure you know what you're doing as far as what you're signing. Read over them till you get used to them. Regulatory compliance, it ensures adherence to federal and state regulations governing freight transport, helping both parties maintain legal standards in their operations. Overall, the BCA is essential for establishing a clear, legally sound framework for the relationship between brokers and carriers, facilitating smooth operations in the transportation industry. And for you that are going to be freight agents with me as well, you'll understand that this is the same platform, the same layout, schematic that you're looking at between being a freight agent and the shipper. You could go through these contracts all day long, but we're not lawyers, okay? These, because remember, when you're dealing with the legal system, everything's due to interpretation, okay? And interpretation could literally be one word. In a general context of speaking, you would say, okay, that's the everyday word I use. But when we're talking about legality of a contract, each word does mean something. And it actually even gets worse than that, because you can take one sentence and another sentence and compare them side by side, and it completely transfers the concept of what it would be into something totally different. So, like I said, you ain't really got to worry about it. I just want you to understand why you got to make sure you have a BCA. Without a BCA, you're not legal in no form, you're not protecting nobody. And you're actually harming yourself, or the MC number, whoever the person you're representing. Now, the key components of a BCA is the termination clause, the dispute resolution, the indemnification, the confidentiality, and the governing law. So in the termination clause, this defines the conditions under which the agreement can be terminated by either party, including notice periods. Dispute resolution outlines procedures for resolving disputes, including mediation, arbitration processes. That's having somebody in between you and them, so you possibly don't want to kill them if that ever gets to that point where because I get out of hand. I know we agreed on one thing and they're telling me something else, but that's what this is here to prevent, from misconceptualizing a given task. Identification. Indemnification. Specifies responsibility for identifying the other party in the event of claims or damages arising from their actions. It literally means identifying who you're actually doing business with, and it should be the corporate name or business name, the firm that you're actually making an agreement with to move that freight. Confidentiality establishes terms of protecting sensitive information shared between the parties. If you give away information, okay, and they catch you doing this, they will mess you up, okay? They're probably going to shut down that person's MC, whoever that is, but you legally, they can actually personally come after you. Even though you did a limited power of attorney, they can come after you, okay? So don't play with this one. Governing law identifies the jurisdiction whose laws will govern the agreement. Important for legal clarity. That's going to be basically, where are you doing the business at? If I'm doing it out of Chicago, that's going to probably be under the local, whatever jurisdiction it's going to be, under their laws. Same thing, whatever state you're in. These components work together to create a comprehensive framework that protects the interest for both brokers and the carriers while ensuring smooth and compliant operations. And that just means keep all the, trying to keep the nails out of the road type of thing. You don't want to cause a delay in something. And this is always after the fact when this happens. Okay, this is not going to happen while you're dealing with the freight. This is usually things that come back to bite you in case something happens. When you're talking about a lot of freight and stuff, people start pointing fingers, and you don't want to be there without a chair. Okay, the components, the rest of it for the BCA are going to be the parties involved. That, because the other part goes with this. I just didn't label it part one and part two, but this is continuation. So the parties involved, scope of work, payment terms, liability and insurance, regulatory compliance. So the properties involved, this clarifies the broker and the carrier, like who their legal names are in business, and the in essence of business. And because you got a business license. Scope of work, this obviously tells you what's going to include it, and the type of freight, routes, any special instructions or requirements like lumping, unlumping, hazmat, etc. Payment terms outlines the rates, payment schedules, and conditions of payment, including any additional fees like detention. Um, you got detention, you got layover, you got tono, which is trailer order not used. Those different things that are after the fact, you need to make sure they're in that contract, because each one, remember, each load agreement is a contract. Liability and insurance specifies liability limits for both parties and requires proof of insurance, ensuring adequate coverage for potential claims. Obviously, they're going to look at your COI, that's your certificate of insurance, and they're going to look at those claims. They're going to tell you what they are. You're going to know if it's a half a million, million, or even more on so they can cover the product in case something happens. Regulatory compliance. This affirms that both parties will adhere to applicable federal and state regulations governing transportation and logistics. Uh, that's all going to be whatever they're going to do in this. I'm not a lawyer. I just know it's there, and I got a pretty decent idea. It covers each party to some degree, but on the other end, when you're looking at them, if you can actually understand more or less when they're talking about it, it looks like sometimes they're trying to throw more responsibility on the other party. But remember, the brokerage is the one doing this, the carrier packets. They send you the carrier packet as a dispatcher. You fill out their carrier packet and you send back to them, signed and everything with the appropriate information. And now you're set up with that carrier. It's a one-time deal. Now you're set up with that. You're set up with that brokerage, and you're good. You're able to get freight from them. Okay, but still, don't just because you got a carrier packet don't mean nothing. Always make sure you check their credit to make sure that they're still in good standing with their credit, so you know you're going to get paid. All right, this is the steps to fill out the broker carrier agreement. These are basically the directions to some degree, but the directions that I really want you to look at are going to be in the chapter. It's literally step by step. This here is the same thing. It's just not so clear on the step by step. That's the reason I said I got to put that in there. In addition, you got videos in the end that do step by step on there, writing it in, signing it in, what goes in each block, and everything. So there's no reason you shouldn't understand this. Um, and I hate to say that in a better way than I could actually give you, because sometimes it's just better to use another way of presenting the information. So that please make sure you watch those videos. So steps to fill out the broker carriage agreement: review the agreement. Okay, enter the party information, define the scope of work, specify payment terms, insurance and liability requirements, duration and termination of clauses, add additional clauses, and review and sign. So review and agree. Before filling out the agreement, read through the entire document and understand its terms and conditions, and make sure you understand them. Identify any sections that may require clarification and additional information. If you don't do it now, once you sign it, it's too late. Now, what you do is the carrier agreement. This is going to be the part where it has the overall clause, right? So this is where you can, even though you got those, the overall, oh my goodness, the rate confirmation and load confirmation, that's for those, right? So there's going to be special terms on those too. But make sure you read over this, because this is the one, remember that once you do this, you're not going to do it again. But make sure you read over and negotiate anything you possibly can if it doesn't fit your overall carrier's normal way of doing business. Because there's some things that they try to sneak in there. So please make sure. And when it comes to this, if you got questions for me when it comes to reading these, like information they're telling you, please let me know and I'll tell you if it's a go or no go. Enter party information. Fill out the legal names, addresses, and contact details of both the broker and the carrier. Ensure all information is accurate to avoid future disputes. Definition of scope of work. Clearly outline the services to be provided by the carrier. Include specifics about the equipment type, the routes, and any limitations or conditions. Specific payment terms. Detail the agreed upon rates and payment schedules. Usually your factory is going to take care of the payment schedules because you're going to get paid like quick pay kind of deal. But when you're doing these, don't fill out one-day pay or something with these people. It's cheaper to go through your factoring service than it is to go through, because they have factoring services too, and they're going to make money off everything they're doing. So make sure that you are getting, you're not doing like, oh, get paid in 2 days, 3 days. You're paying extra money for no reason. You can get all that through your factoring service. Anybody's got an MC is going to have a factoring service. Payment schedule. Okay, make sure to include information about how and when payments will be made, as well as any potential additional charges. This right here, this could go both ways. So when you're a dispatch service, depends if you got your MC, you're also, this kind of going toward their direction as far as knowing what they're doing. But remember, this is a broker agreement. So that's basically what you're going to be looking at coming from them to you, even though you're going to use factoring. Insurance and liability requirements confirm that the carriers meet the necessary insurance requirement. So they're saying that you do. Fill in the details regarding coverage about the types and limits, ensuring compliance with industry standards. With industry standards, everything, all this should be industry standards. But anyways, this is going to be them looking at you when you fill it out, because remember, you're filling out their form. That's the reason this wording is looking like that, because it makes you feel like, oh my God, they're controlling it. They really, truth are, they are controlling it. That's the reason for you to become freight agents with me. This is what you're looking at coming from the carriers or the dispatcher that's representing that carrier. So, you know, because he needs to be looking over it, but this is what you're presenting to make sure they understand when you're paying, how much insurance you expect to have on their equipment, and all that stuff. So you're reversing. Remember, you got to remember which side of the pitch you're on. Are you the freight agent when you're filling this out, or giving that to them and make sure they're filling it out, or are you the dispatcher filling it out on behalf of an MC? Duration and termination clauses indicate the effective date of the agreement once they sign that load confirmation. That is the agreement date, and the terms upon which it can be terminated. Be clear about any required notice periods. Now, this is talking about the carrier agreement, not the load confirmation. So this is going to have specifics based on when you want to terminate your overall doing business with it. Most people don't do this. They're going to let it go because they got their MC. You ain't got to go back to every broker you've ever done business with when you decide to let your MC go or anything like that and discontinue this. Once you get it going, it's there. Add additional clauses. This is where you're going to negotiate as a dispatcher. But as a freight agent, it's going to be the other way. Include any necessary clauses for identifying or clarifying any of the provisions that are relevant to the agreement. This is when you're going to have to make that open and known about what you feel about something or what you feel like should be changed in a certain direction based on your carrier's normal way of doing business. Will they change it? Most of the time they won't. So it's a take it or leave it type of situation. Most points coming from the dispatcher side. From the broker side, for you that are doing brokerage with me, as far as being freight agents, for this one, you know, be fair about it. Don't do a bunch of crazy stuff in it. I've never had nobody reject one because they need the freight, but don't be too overzealous and try to put your thumb on the back of anybody's neck. Keep this within the industry standards because you need to do business, and you want them to call you because they've had a good experience with you as a broker. Now, review and sign. Before finalizing, review the document for accuracy and completeness. Both parties should sign and date the agreement to validate it. Both parties will sign it. The broker signs it or the freight agent signs it. He's got limited power of attorney with the brokerage. And the dispatcher will sign it because he has limited power of attorney with the MC or the carrier. MC and carrier, remember, are the same things. I'm just saying MC because whoever owns that MC. But if it's one truck and he's got an MC, he's a carrier. Common pitfalls to avoid: incomplete information, ambiguous language, ignoring regulatory requirements, and not reviewing regularly. Okay, just not reviewing on a regular schedule. Incomplete information. Failure to provide complete details can lead to misunderstandings. Double check all fields are filled out correctly. Ambiguous language. Avoid vague terms. Be as specific as possible to minimize potential disputes. If somebody's using, look, you know English, okay, and look it up. But if they're using a bunch of language that is so scattered that can mean multiple things, you need to go back and say, look, dude, I'm sorry, but you got this in here, and this means more than one thing in this given scenario. So make sure you're not signing something that's got terms all over the place instead of just sticking specifically, and you know 100% that it's sticking directly to that particular topic. Ignoring regulatory requirements, ensure compliance with local, state, and federal regulations regarding transportation and liability. Remember, federal is going to outrun anything because this is all based on federal laws, you know, but make sure it's doing your local and state as well because they can't pull you all the way back to a state or a local, a courtroom, you know, depends on what's going on. Not review and regularly, periodically review the agreement to ensure it remains relevant and compliant with any changes in regulations or business practices. Nobody does this. I mean, besides the broker, because this is what he does, but dispatch service and the carrier are not reviewing them damn contracts. It's not happening. So you can take that one for what it is on that one. All right, conclusion for filling out the BCA is crucial for establishing a successful work relationship between you and the broker or the broker and the carrier, which side of the fence you're on. By understanding the components of the agreement and following the structured approach, dispatchers can help ensure that all parties are clear about their obligations, leading to smoother operations and a reduced risk of disputes. Be honest, you don't really come into a lot of disputes unless you got OS and D stuff like that over shortages and damages and stuff like that. They got to figure, okay, who's going to pay for this? I mean, because look, he gave you the freight, right? But who's responsible for the freight? You know, you're looking at every scenario based on who's supposedly in charge of where the money is going to be lost from. And obviously, you know, even in brokerage, you can do like it's another type of insurance where it kind of goes along with the regular insurance of having it, and it handles these OS&Ds. And it's not really expensive because you're not going to have that many in the long, especially if you're not doing commodities like perishables and stuff, then you shouldn't see a lot of it. All right, now this is about watching those videos. Please go to the end of the chapter. They're all organized. They're there for you to watch. They're concise on the information. Please watch those because that goes through the overall carrier packets step by step, line by line, to know what you need to put there. And because remember, as a dispatcher, you need to get this from whoever your MC holder is. Whoever that carrier is, they need to provide you with their information so you can fill out these carrier packets in addition to the limited power of attorney. So it's basically copying and pasting their signature in that given spot, because remember, you can't sign for carrier packets. Only that owner can, but they can give you limited power of attorney to use their signature, not your signature. Your name should not be signed on nothing when it comes to the carrier packets. Only the rate confirmation and load confirmation. That's the only thing you can sign for. Okay, that's the short, well, it's not the short version because you got to watch those videos, but this is how to fill out carrier packets and what is in those carrier packets. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate, give me a call and we'll go over it again. Like I said, if you watch those videos, you should have zero problems. But anyways, I appreciate it. Thank everybody for listening to it. Let's move on to the next chapter.